Hi, welcome to Celebrating Culture. I'm with Wendi Berman, who is an expert on Jefferson Davis because she spent 5 years making a documentary about Jefferson Davis. Wendi, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks very much, Charles. I appreciate it.
Did you travel a lot? How much did you learn about Davis? You made 3 DVDs about it?
It spanned 4 nights on PBS. It was a 5-year odyssey.
There is no pre-Confederacy Davis. It's almost as if he were, in the average American's mind, born in 1861 out of nowhere. And the idea that there was a Davis before and a Davis after simply does not exist.
He was a veteran, fought in the Mexican-American War.
Yes.
And he's had 12 years in the service.
He's considered a war hero.
Yes.
The Mexican-American War, and then he became Secretary of War.
He was a senator. He's very involved in legislative policy, which we see him in a suit. We don't see him in a uniform.
He was a reluctant Confederate president. He was the last person to leave. He was a beloved member in many ways of DC. He and his wife, Verena, were sparkling intellects of the DC scene back in the day.
And what I understand, there was a thing called a moral tariff. The House of Representatives passes it. It's headed to the Senate, and the South decides they don't want to be part of this tariff, and they got other issues as slavery and other things going on, and they all say goodbye to the Union.
And just imagine it. Imagine saying goodbye to the Union. And this is one of the reasons we focused on the man. It's dramatic.
It's got to be, because
he was the last person to leave. By the time Davis came to say goodbye, you could hear a pin drop and muffled weeping. It was, well, you can imagine, you're saying goodbye to your country.
Well, he had been Secretary of War, so he'd been in D.C. for many years.
Oh, yes.
And he's saying, I have to leave because my state is calling me back. Now, another side of Davis was what went on as Plantation, and Benjamin Montgomery fascinated me as I learned about him.
He wanted to make, within the vile parameters of slavery, how could I make this, how could I mitigate it? Well, obviously mitigating slavery is
impossible.
This is impossible. You just have to do away with it.
Montgomery actually they were able to earn money outside of the plantation.
And that's what they did. Joseph followed these utopian teachings, and his brother, who looked to Joseph, Jefferson, looked to Joseph as more of a father figure, said, yes, that's the way to do it.
They reclassified him, I hear, servants or indentured servants. We're going to reclassify you and get rid of this slave title, and we're going to educate you. Then after they got educated, they said, okay, you're going to be in charge of purchasing. You're going to be in charge of shipping. So there was some really management positions that opened up, like you were in a company, basically.
I can say that as far as ships go, there was a paddle wheel.
Yeah.
It was Benjamin Montgomery. He developed something for the paddle wheel.
It was, what I read, it was a low water propeller that he actually applied for a patent.
Jefferson Davis had to do it for him because he was enslaved and couldn't do it.
And that was an American law.
Yes.
Now, as I read this, I actually understood that when the Confederacy was created, Jefferson Davis put into the bylaws of the Confederacy that slaves could own patents.
What do you know, right? When you come in, the Confederacy, we just have to get into that place and look at it historically and not politically. And this is hard for a lot of people. It's hard for people in classrooms, students in classrooms. But remove the politics as much as you can. Remove the fact that slavery is vile. We know that. This is heinous.
They had actually done so much to prepare their former slaves to run this facility. They financed the sale, turned it over to them.
How do you deal with the odious institution of slavery? You want to be utopian, bear with me, within its parameters.
Yes.
Well, you do everything you can. You educate. You make sure, because you can see the writing on the wall. You know that it's going to end at some point.
Yes, it is.
What do? You educate. You make sure that the people who have been enslaved by your family can function. And get a job and make money. It on their own.
I heard that Benjamin had 5 children.
5 children, and they went on after slavery, because the Davis brothers saw the writing on the wall.
Yes.
And they said that we must equip them with skills so that they can survive and thrive. And they did. And in fact, the Montgomerys started something called Montgomery Mound Bayou in Mississippi.
Yeah, I read about Mound Bayou.
Yeah.
It was 840 acres. I understand by 1870 they had bought the plantation. They actually won best cotton at an exposition in the world, international exposition. Benjamin goes on into politics, I believe.
He becomes the first black elected official of the state of Mississippi.
Now, was that unique, Mound Bayou?
It is the only all-black municipality in Mississippi. And this is well before what's considered the civil rights era.
Now understand that Davis actually had a lot of tragedy in his life.
A couple of scholars intimated that he never truly got over the death of his first wife.
Almost like Abraham Lincoln.
There were some parallels. They both lost sons.
Yes.
They both, and Davis went on to lose all 4 of his sons. And then I believe it was after he died, he lost Winnie, who was considered the daughter of the Confederacy.
You told me about that he adopted somebody?
We were digging deep and discovered he and Verena saw a child who was abused and neglected, and they adopted him. Now, what is remarkable about that? It would be remarkable anyway, but the fact is it was a black child. It was a little boy called Jim Limber.
I guess wrapping it up, the third part would be post-Civil War, because Davis actually dies in New Orleans. Understand his service was 60,000 people.
Oh, yeah, he was laid in state at Gallier Hall.
And it just was a massive turnout. It seemed that there was a lot of unity that came back, because it just wasn't a white turnout.
No, and there was something that happened too. This is an anecdote that we found out from a scholar that eluded us in our own research. One of his former slaves offered him, when he and his wife Verena were in virtual penury after the war, offered him a loan of $1,000.
After the war, he was staying at friends' houses. He was broke, so his
He was
former
flat out
slaves
broke.
came back and said,
I will lend you, if you need this. There was friendship within some kind of good relationship at any rate.
Right.
Who would do that?
Yeah, that's amazing. Wendy, I want to thank you so much for all your comments and what you've
Thank
done.
you. Thanks so
and I
much.
hope you inspire other people to take the time to really learn about the complexity of what was going on in the 1800s in America, because it's clearly, I mean, it's so eye-opening when you hear all these antidotes. You know?
It is indeed. We could go on and talk if you want to grab a drink.
I'm done. Let's go. We're going to get our drink.
Go. Let's go.
Ciao. Welcome to the Italian Piazza in New Orleans, Louisiana. And right next door is the American Italian Cultural Center, which hosts numerous events throughout the year and is a great place to read about the Italian history. When you subscribe to AWE News, you'll get updated on all the videos we're making as far as the celebrities that come into New Orleans to talk about Italian culture, the parties, the events, what's going on. It's just a great way to learn about Italian history, the values, and what makes Italian being fun. E parlare italiano.